packed the case yourself? Was it this time, all right? You're under arrest, all right? You're both under arrest. You're both travelling together, okay? Hello, they're both customs. Just come through, please. You are together, yeah? How long have you both been away?
On holiday.
Yeah, how long?
2 weeks.
Okay. And where have you travelled whilst you've been away?
Oh, just around Spain, just in the Costa.
Right. You've stayed in one place, or?
Yeah, about all around holidays, just normal.
Okay. You ever been stopped by customs before?
No.
Okay. Bags packed by yourselves? Everything in the cases belong to yourselves? Right. Also, where certain things aren't allowed to be brought into the UK, drugs, weapons, obscene material.
Yeah.
The man stares intently as his suitcase is searched. He then removes a mobile phone, which causes suspicion.
Okay. Sure, just part of the check, yeah? That's fine.
He gets his phone back, but seems a little agitated. Then a package is found, which might explain why.
What's the name, mate?
It's sweets. Sweets. All sweets. For kids.
Right, well, you'll open it up because I can't see what's in there. Go on.
But Brandon's not falling for that. He opens the package to check the contents himself.
Yeah, it's the sweets, is it?
Yeah.
It's cannabis, isn't it? Herbal cannabis. You're not sure? You said you packed the case yourself?
Put them in here.
All right. Was it this time, all right? You're under arrest, all right? Right. Basically, you're both under arrest. You're both travelling together, okay? On suspicion of importing an illegal drug, controlled drug, all right? Now, you don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention in question something that you later rely on in court, all right? Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Do you understand?
With both passengers under arrest, their cases continue to be searched. And it doesn't take long to find a number of identical packages.
How much you got in total, mate?
That's it, 4 packets.
The search now moves on to his wife. Almost immediately, Officer Brandon finds something hidden in the clothing. This time, he suspects it's cannabis resin. And as with the man's case, there's more than just one package. The drugs have been crudely concealed in clothing with little attempt to hide what's inside. As the last block is removed from the case, the couple know they've been caught red-handed.
There's 6 resin cannabis and 4 packages of herbal cannabis. I'm not sure weight at the moment. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I can't at the moment, mate. All right.
The man should perhaps be more concerned about the illegal drugs found in his suitcase than having a cigarette. But tampering with the drug seizure will only get him in more trouble. As the couple are taken away for a full body search, officers are eager to find out how much they found.
2.68.
2.68 kilos of herbal cannabis and 5.48 kilos of cannabis resin adds up to a haul worth over £20,000. It's a huge amount of illegal drugs removed from the streets.
It has been adopted by a higher level team, if you like, within the department, and they usually only take on the larger cases. So we wait and see, but it is a substantial amount. There's no getting away from that.
It's been an excellent day for Brandon. Less so for the couple, who'll now be detained in custody. There's no respite for officers in Gatwick as another Caribbean flight arrives from Jamaica. Suspicion was raised by a German woman who claimed to have lost the key to the padlock on her suitcase. After forcing the case open, Officer Paul discovered that the woman was carrying a significant amount of cannabis.
Okay, so if you just stand up for me, put your hands out, you put the sunglasses down.
She's arrested straight away and put in handcuffs before being escorted to the airport's custody suite for further questioning.
Presently, we have the 25-year-old German under arrest in the custody suite. So whilst she's getting her rights read to her, she's waiting for a solicitor to turn up. What we do is go through all the luggage. This is obviously where the drugs were found initially. And interestingly, she's in the top of the suitcase. She or whoever put the drugs in there has put a lot of foam around the outside of the case and around the edges of the case.
With the suitcase stuffed to the brim, it's a huge amount of cannabis for one person to be carrying.
These are just 2 or 3 kilo blocks of herbal cannabis. And very little else.
The cannabis is bagged up. Paul needs to weigh the drugs to find out the severity of the woman's crime.
So it's 18.15 kilos. The suitcase weighed 23 kilos, so nearly the whole suitcase was cannabis. That'd be worth between 40 and 50,000 pounds.
It's another excellent find by officers. For the German woman, it's been a highly risky gamble that hasn't paid off. Officers aboard the cutters protect our coastline against drug smugglers, who are a constant but invisible threat. These high-powered ships operate in all weathers, but in September 2000, a storm off the coast of Cornwall drove them back into Falmouth in search of shelter. Always on the lookout for suspicious activity, they noticed another vessel taking refuge from the heavy seas.
The vessel, rather than coming into Falmouth, it turned and went to the other side of Carrick Roads, which is into a small harbour, which is actually St Mawes.
The officers thought it was a local, but then watched as it tied up in a dangerous position.
As the tide started to go out, they realised that this mooring was actually on a mud bank or a sandbank, and the yacht was actually settling and starting to tip.
Always ready to respond to a fellow sailor in need, the cutter decided to help.
So they launched their onboard rigid inflatable, their rib, motored across into St Mawes Harbour, went to the vessel and challenged it.
The officers had come to help, but the man on board was a smuggler who made a startling confession.
And as they stepped aboard, he turned around to them and said, "Oh, right, well, OK, the game's up, there's 6 tons on board."
The officers' act of charity had paid dividends.
They were completely flabbergasted. The first reaction was, "And what do we do now?" And then somebody managed to I better get a notebook out and make a note of this, because effectively I've got a confession already before we go to court. At which point they arrested him.
The skipper was John Moore. He led them into the cabin to see the drugs for themselves.
There were bales of cannabis, literally in every available space within the vessel.
They also found evidence he wasn't working alone.
But 2 passports were actually found on the vessel. So they decided that the best thing to do was to remove him from the vessel. 3 of the cutter crew stayed on board the ketch and wait and see if the crew came back in the morning.
Moore's accomplices did return, right into the trap.
It was about 8 o'clock in the morning. 2 men jumped into the cockpit of the yacht, and basically the cutter crew arrested them there and then.
The accomplices, Craig and Needham, joined their skipper at the police station, where Moore's frank confessions continued.
And he was presented to the custody sergeant. He was then asked, "What's your occupation?" To which he replied, "I'm a drug smuggler."
This time, however, he'd failed. On the day of the trial, all three pleaded guilty to their part in the crime.
Mr. Moore was subsequently sentenced to 10 years imprisonment, Mr. Needham to 4 years imprisonment, and Mr. Craig to 5 years imprisonment.
3 more criminals were behind bars, thanks to the keen eyes of the officers and a stroke of luck.
The street value at that time was estimated to be in the region of £14.5 million. At the end of the day, the vessel being forced into Falmouth was really the only reason that we were able to intercept this load. Without that, it's very unlikely anybody would have known that this consignment of drugs was on its way.
At Gatwick Airport, a flight has just landed from Montego Bay in Jamaica. UK border agency officers are using drug detection dogs and an X-ray machine to monitor luggage coming off the flight. A dog indication has been given on 2 suitcases, and the X-ray strongly suggests that there are drug smugglers on the flight. In the baggage reclaim area, officers closely monitor the first of the passengers to collect one of the suspect's suitcases. A young mother and child collect the case and head towards the customs channels. It's here that Officer Mike steps in to stop the woman and break the news to her.
Controlled drug. Your bags. The bags you just said are yours. Therefore, I am arresting you on suspicion of being involved in the importation of controlled drug. Do not have to say anything, so it may harm your defence. We do not mention when questioned something may later rely on in court. Anything you do so may be given in evidence. Do you understand?
The woman is led away for further questioning, but protests her innocence.
Please don't play the game. Right, we're going to be getting some women in to search you anyway.
That's fine.
Meanwhile, the second suspect suitcase is collected by another passenger.
Hello there, sir. You travelling alone today? Just bring your bag over to the bench for me, please.
The man declares he's the owner of the suitcase, so Officer Gary confirms his fate.
I'm arresting you on suspicion of the illegal importation of a controlled drug into the UK. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you don't mention, when questioned, something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Do you understand you've been arrested and cautioned? Right, if you come this way with me.
The man is also led away for further questioning.
Straight over towards that officer over there.
With both passengers now under arrest, Gary can finally inspect the suspicious brown packages found in the suitcases.
We suspect them to contain herbal cannabis, and that's why the gentleman's been arrested and cautioned.
The contents of the packages will need to be formally assessed to get an idea about the weight and the value of the drugs. A strip search was conducted on both passengers, but no further packages were found. The woman is led away to the airport's custody suite to be detained, whilst Officer Mike assesses the quantity and value of the drugs found in her suitcase.
She had 8 blocks in the bag. All of them are about 2 kilos each, but I'll chuck them on the scales in a minute and just get a weight of all of them together.
With such a large haul of suspect packages, a field test must be conducted to confirm that the substance definitely is herbal cannabis.
Put the first drop on it, then that'll go through onto the second bit of filter paper. Then put some of this powdery stuff on it. And if it's positive, it should go sort of a dark red colour. Right, that's a positive then.
OK, there's a couple of blankets there. If you want anything, just give us a buzz. OK?
The male passenger is also detained at the custody suite.
There's not a lot you can do until he actually gets his solicitor, speaks to him. Then after that, other officers will go and interview him. And until then, we're just now going to go through the bags and find out exactly what he's got.
A series of large, brown, sealed packages are pulled from the bottom of the man's suitcase. There are 8 blocks in total, making it another very significant seizure. Gary weighs the packages of drugs to find out how much the male passenger was carrying.
And as you can see there, the 8 blocks weigh approximately 17.26 kilograms. So there's probably about 16.5 to 17 kilograms of herbal cannabis within them packages.
With 2 suitcases full of herbal cannabis being intercepted from the same flight, officers are delighted with the seizure. The 16 blocks found in both suitcases weighed over 34 kilograms in total and had a street value of £80,000 to £100,000. In Gatwick, the X-ray has picked up a bag with some suspicious contents. It's put back on the carousel while Calvin watches from a distance to identify the bag's owner. The passenger's girlfriend is walking ahead, a tactic often used by smugglers to avoid detection. Calvin follows the passenger through the channels, where the Class A drugs dog Rossi gives an indication on the same blue bag. The questions asked by the officers are seemingly obvious, but the answers given can be used to build up a prosecution if anything's found.
So is this all your baggage? Is all your baggage, sir? Yeah, and these are bags you took out with you? Has anybody given you anything to bring into this country? Okay, just have a quick look in the blue bag then. Yeah, just the blue one, is it? Start with that one. Start with that one. Always start with the bottom one. You know what this is? Don't touch it. Okay, apply booze to be drugs.
The suitcase is full of sealed packages, which look like cannabis. The couple are arrested immediately.
I mentioned when questioned, something which later rely in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Do you both understand? Do you understand? Is that yes? Do you understand? Yep? Okay. All right, let's take it out the back now.
Cannabis is a Class C drug, but a quantity like this is worth thousands of pounds, so the investigation starts immediately. And Calvin needs to make sure the right people feel the full force of the law.
Between 10 and 15, probably. It's probably more like 15 kilos. I mean, obviously we'll have to spike it first and test it, to establish, do a field test to establish what the drug is. I'm making an assumption at the moment it's cannabis. Okay, and he'll explain your legal rights.
Whatever the packages contain, it's not looking good for this suspect.
Move across, okay?
The custody suite is where suspected smugglers are welcomed back into the UK. It's a significant seizure, but Calvin's job now is to make sure everyone involved in the importation is identified and prosecuted.
What are you doing? Right, sit down, sit down. All we'll do is we'll let the custody officer know you're here, okay? And then he'll come and see you and explain your legal rights. Okay? Sit down now. Ah. Okay, again.
Intercepted Green Channel, North Terminal.
North Terminal. And opened a blue suitcase, which he did. Unzipped it, found it to contain foam. Under the foam with tape back packages, which I believe to be controlled drugs.
11:38.
Cell number 2. Before you do, you can take your shoes off and leave them outside and your belt. I'll get you. You've got a blanket, might be. You take your shoes off them. Just leave them outside here. Yeah. Do you want any drink of water or anything? Sure? Okay. You can't smoke here, I'm afraid. And the name on this bag relates to the female. That will tie her into this bag as well as him.
It's unclear who's involved, so the female passenger must also be kept in custody.
But it looks like there could be controlled drugs in one of the bags. Do you understand it? Sorry?
You know what drug it is?
No, I don't know yet. They will find out when they do, they'll let me know. Let you know. We just suspected that they are drugs at the moment.
Calvin suspects the packages contain cannabis. And the smell is unmistakable.
We check them all just to make sure they all are cannabis rather than we've had concealed ones before where some have been cannabis and some have been cocaine.
They do all contain cannabis.
and the weight of the packages is 20.63 kilos.
It's a huge amount of drugs off the streets. Back in Dover, the next target has been pulled by the specialist rummage team. It's an awkward load, exactly the sort of cover used by smugglers to conceal drugs and tobacco.
I mean, it's just such a loose description, isn't it? I mean, it is. It's a children's playground, isn't it, basically?
Yeah. Well, at the moment, it's been quite easy.
Yeah, the bags of balls, yeah.
Private dogs.
Oh, right.
Exactly go.
Yeah.
From there.
It might take a while. It's all going to be handballed off, basically. I mean, I don't know whether they get a forklift in there and get some of the stuff, but... I mean, yeah, you see things like this now and again, but it's not the norm. I mean, I'm just guessing it's some sort of children's playground that's been out in Spain for the season and is being brought back. It is a good cover load, isn't it? I mean, it's very difficult to get over the top of and to see in amongst.
After hours of offloading, the team finds some suspiciously heavy wooden boxes.
Yeah.
That's not right.
No. They've made it look like the spongy steps, haven't they?
It's extremely suspicious, so the team decide to drill the boxes.
And I mean, you saw the load, how difficult it was to get in. They've managed to get themselves in there, identified these packages. They've drilled a hole, and inside there's some green plastic. I think it was in that one. It's in that one. It's in that one. And it's in that one.
Stuart thinks the plastic packaging could indicate drugs.
I would think that there'll be a large quantity of cannabis in there, maybe up to a tonne.
The driver is arrested while they work out what they found.
But it's a slow, methodical process now. The guy's arrested, there's no rush.
After another 2 hours of careful unpacking, the moment of truth has arrived.
He's just about to take the lid off. I think in the porn industry, this is the money shot, isn't it?
It's a massive haul of what looks like cannabis.
Can't smell anything. I'm guessing it's cannabis resin in there.
You can't smell it.
Still can't get anything off it.
All you smell is the plastic.
All the boxes are full of bales of cannabis, which have apparently come from a special garden.
The maker's manufacturer mark. It's just their. It's come from that particular cannabis farm in Morocco, or wherever it is it's come from, and that they put their own stamp on it, and that's how it gets shipped out.
The officers now want to know just how much they've seized from the smugglers. It's the biggest haul of cannabis at Dover for years.
Sorry, I put 928 kilos. About.
And the specialist rummage team are delighted.
928 kilos is nearly a tonne, so that's excellent.
We've had a bit of a lean period actually, our team. We've gone 3 months maybe without anything. We've had a few little cigarette seizures might have been on the way, but this is what we call a proper job, really.
In Manchester, a radio message has come in from a pilot of an EasyJet flight. 2 female passengers are suspected of smoking cannabis in the plane's rear toilet.
Who is it, blonde? I'll go upstairs, mate. All right, I'll go upstairs.
The pressure is now on for sniffer dog Amy to identify the suspects amongst the crowd.
Stay single file to the right, please, as you're coming through, thanks. Just stay to the right and keep walking past. Ames, in here. Just lower that back for me, please. Amy.
Amy is looking for drugs, but UK border officer Phil is trained to spot suspicious behaviour.
Thanks very much. There was a girl who didn't really want to. I don't know whether she had a small handbag. If it was her, she wasn't too keen on lowering it for the dog.
It wasn't a definite indication, so Amy boards the plane to search the seats for any drugs ditched by the suspects.
Hey, am I in about the general area where she was sat? Yeah. Dog isn't pinpointing any particular area, she's just very busy around all those seats. Staff have been on already and done a search of the whole area. What there could be, the dog could just be picking up the residual smell of whatever she's been doing, been taking.
With no physical evidence left on the plane, the officers will stop and search the 2 suspects for any cannabis. Unexpectedly, the officer gets a hit for cocaine.
It's quite noticeable that this particular one wasn't keen for the dog to go anywhere near her. And by the sounds of it, they are getting traces of them at the moment for cocaine. So the officers are just doing further investigation on that at the moment.
Confronted with the evidence, one of the girls admits to having taken cocaine. But with such strong traces, officers are still highly suspicious.
Well, still getting hits absolutely everywhere for coke. The thing you said you used some last night, yeah. First luggage. I also got hits on the plane for coke, so from the dog where you were sat.
On the plane?
Yeah, if you both, yeah. Your seats on the plane, okay. So, what I'm going to do, we'll take you into one. You want to take one of these rooms? We'll get some repack the bag and bring it in. Come in here with me.
Officers have no jurisdiction over drug use abroad, but they suspect the girl may be carrying cocaine internally. It's a serious crime with potentially lethal consequences.
Also, I've got suspicion that you could have drugs internally somewhere because there's none in your bag.
You crazy man.
No, that's it. So, what I have to do here, okay? I'm arresting you, okay? On suspicion of being involved with the illegal importation of a controlled substance, cocaine. Okay, it's working on this one. I have to arrest you. You do not have to say anything, okay? But it may harm your defence. If you fail to mention something in question you later on in court, anything you do say will be given in evidence. Do you understand that?
And what happens when you don't find anything?
If nothing's found, I'm sure you'll be arrested and go on your way.
Their ordeal is far from over, and their attempt to dispose of the evidence has failed.
Okay, right, no worries.
One of the officers found a package by the bench, which we think one of the girls has actually dropped. It was found to be cannabis in a sock. He's actually looked, and within the cannabis he's found a small plastic bag, like a deal bag, containing some white powder. We suspect that to be cocaine. The girl who was travelling with her, the officers have conducted a search of person. During the search of person, they found another package. It's a sock containing cannabis. They weren't sure whether they could feel something else, so they upgraded the search to a strip search. They've done a strip search now, and they're quite happy she's got nothing on her person.
But having detected such high hits for cocaine, the girls are led away for a full body X-ray. Class A smugglers face a maximum of life in prison.
Just get in there and sit down, please. You're best not talking to each other. If you talk to each other, we'll have to take you one at a time, and it'll take longer.
Dealing with suspected drug swallowers is also stressful for the officers. If the girls do have packages internally, it's a life-threatening situation.
By using the machines we have in the Green Channel, we've found very high traces of cocaine. So we believe they could well have concealments of cocaine inside them. We just simply put the passenger on the machine and it passes the person through the machine. We instantly get an image on screen that we can examine, and if we can see packages there, then they're back up to custody while we await the packages to pass through the system.
Find anything?
Don't know.
What do you think? No.
You tell us. We've got to be 100% sure there's nothing up there. 'Cause if we say there's nothing there, and if it is something like cocaine, that when the package does split, you're talking a matter of seconds before you suffer a fatal overdose. So we want to be 110% sure there's nothing there before we say, yeah, it's negative. If you put your feet on them marks, hold on to either side, it's be a couple of seconds and it'll start moving.
Thankfully, both scans are clear, but the girls are still in trouble. 2 weeks later, a court decided the drugs were for personal use only, and they got a 12-month suspended sentence for the attempted importation. Successful drug seizures at sea are often triggered by foreign surveillance aircraft who alert British Customs when a suspicious vessel is headed for UK waters.
In February 2000, we became alerted to suspicious activity by the French Customs Service, who had been patrolling the western fringes of the Bay of Biscay. They did some basic checks, as they do in all vessels, and found out that it had been registered from Panama. They also noticed that there was a number of items on board which appeared to be barrels, which they thought was a little bit unusual. They got in quite close to it, and I think as a result of that, the vessel turned off its GPS, which the French thought a little bit unusual. They were suspicious of that. The vessel was heading towards the UK mainland.
Immediately, the French alerted the British cutters.
We were very fortunate in that we had quite a number of cutters who were actually in South Coast ports at the time, and therefore they were immediately deployed to the coordinates that the French were constantly giving for the vessel.
With no GPS, the aircraft needed to maintain constant visual contact with the vessel named the Deep Diver.
It was very important to continue to track the vessel, and round the clock, this was during the day and at night, they sent up light aircraft to continue that monitoring.
As the Deep Diver entered British waters, the suspects on board knew they were being watched from all sides.
The cutters who were surveilling the Deep Diver were able to observe the barrels being jettisoned by someone on that particular vessel into the English Channel.
The cutter crew decided to strike.
They don't know what they're going to find. It could be that there are firearms on board, and officers have met their death in doing this type of work before.
Once on board, the crew were arrested immediately. Meanwhile, the RIP team searched for the evidence. Their swift action recovered all the barrels containing one of the biggest hauls of cannabis for years.
And when all the barrels were recovered, it totaled 680 kilos of cannabis, which then had a street value in the region of about 3.5 to 4 million pounds. So it was a very significant seizure of cannabis. They were all eventually found guilty by jury trial, and they were sentenced to 9, 7 and 5 years.
Thanks to the cutters, 3 more drug smugglers were safely behind bars. In Manchester, a flight from Pakistan has just arrived at Terminal 2. Flight crews are also subject to regulations, and today UK Border Officer Liz is using a new thermal camera to search the pilot.
Okay, that's fine. Could you just turn around and face the wall for me, please?
The pilot takes the new security measure in good spirits.
Do I get to see?
You can't, unfortunately. You can see me if you want.
He even wants to have a go himself.
Yeah. So I just...
It's all in monochrome, like not colored.
No.
It's not colored.
No. Okay.
So it's a thermograph kind of.
Yeah, it's a thermal imager.
So I'm cool.
You're cool to go, yeah.
The officers find nothing untoward on the crew, so turn their attentions to the passengers. Kevin spots a bag bulging with rectangular packages and tracks it into the channels. Inside, he finds well over the allowance of 200 cigarettes and wants some answers.
Are you here on holiday or are you working?
Yes, I'm on holiday.
On holiday?
Yeah.
On your own? Just you? Just you?
One. Just you.
No
one.
family?
Conveniently, the passenger doesn't understand.
Who are the cigarettes for?
Cigarette.
Cigarettes. Them things on there? Who are they for?
He also doesn't seem to understand the law.
Sorry? They're for yourself?
Yes, I will do.
All them are
not for myself, for sell.
To sell?
Yeah.
You're going to sell them? Yeah. Who to? Who will you sell them to?
It's a surprising admission and against the law. But the man's situation gets worse when Kevin discovers he works for the airline.
If it's a crew member is classed as a privileged person.
Yeah.
Now, if they're carrying excess amounts of cigarettes, over 1,000, well, they'll be arrested and we could prosecute them for it.
Right.
Now, this guy's got nearly 10,000 cigarettes. Comes to light now that the passenger is a member of staff. He works in Karachi, and as such, he's on a staff ticket. He's classed as a privileged person, which means he has to be arrested and prosecuted.
Kevin calls in the investigation team.
David, just let one of them know we've got a prisoner over at T2. Crew with cigarettes. Nearly 10,000. So just let them know we're going to have a prisoner in due course, but they're going to need a translator. We're about to do the arrest. We're just waiting for an Urdu speaking immigration officer to come down to facilitate that.
Kevin's keen eyes picked out the smuggler, and as he works for the airline, the man may be losing his job as well as his cigarettes.
We've had a translator explain to him exactly what's happened. He's upset now because he's worked for the airline for 33 years. He thinks he now may be about to lose his job. but he's normally brought in nearly 10,000 cigarettes, which he's admitted he's going to sell. It's an offence. You can't do that, unfortunately.
As he's led away to be searched, the man's nerves get the better of him.
He wants to go to the toilet. Not getting anything in there, he's in the ditch, is it? Yeah, just shut the door so he can go to the toilet. He wants to use the toilet, but because he's not been searched yet, he could have evidential stuff on him that he'd try and flush down the loo.
Cigarette smugglers aren't usually accompanied to the toilets. But during the search, officers do find something in his jacket, and the man's day goes from bad to worse.
A small package been found in the gentleman's pocket, and it looks like it could be drugs, possibly opium.
I think it's possibly cannabis resin. You get a particular type of resin in Pakistan. If it does turn out to be potentially drugs, yeah, it's cannabis. You see it's gone that red colour? So although he's been arrested for the cigarettes, he's now going to have to be arrested again for this.
Okay. Cannabis. Listen, it's now 12:06. I'm arresting you on suspicion of being knowingly involved in the importation of a controlled drug. You do not have to say anything to make harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Do you understand?
Suddenly, the situation is crystal clear.
Do you understand? Yeah.
With 2 crimes to answer for, the consequences could be serious, even for such small amounts.
3.5 grams.
Well, he's potentially going to lose his job if his airline is involved about the offences he's committed. For the importation of the cigarettes, if we do decide to prosecute, he could face a fine. And for the importation of the drug as well, you're looking at a compound penalty. So that again could be a fine. So he could be facing a couple of £100 fine and potentially lose his job as well, which I believe he's been in his job for 33 years. So it was a silly mistake to make this late in his career.
The war against drug gangs is also fought using undercover surveillance officers. In 2005, officers listening in on one smuggling plot picked up clues that another bigger importation was being hatched by 3 men.
It was carried out over a period of about 6 months. Some fairly intensive surveillance on a number of people, which included Simon Fisher, Thomas Little, Paul Phipps.
Undercover customs officers put the suspects under continuous surveillance. The officers began hearing hints of what sounded like a major drug smuggling plot.
Certain phrases were picked up by the officers while they were out on surveillance, and one of those was brave to do it, and the other was run. Run is a common term in smuggling parlance, one that we would expect to hear. Brave to do it really speaks for itself.
The officers were waiting for any hint of the next stage of the plot. The suspect's intentions became clearer when they were followed to a meeting with a pilot.
You saw the chap who turned out to be a pilot, Leith, make a gesture with his hand. It seemed very much like a plane flying in, coming down low, and then taken up again. And this started to give us an idea of what was being discussed. Part of the surveillance took place in Etchin Hill a little while later, and on the seat of William Leith's car there was a map of the surrounding area, and Simon Fisher, Paul Phipps and William Leith went out looking over the fields. What we believe now was a sighting to try and find a suitable venue to drop the drugs off from the plane.
But so far, all customs had was talk. They needed more concrete proof of what the gang were planning. The already intensive surveillance was about to step up a gear.
Surveillance was carried out by aeroplane from Bournemouth Airport, and in fact what we had was an officer in a plane shadowing the light aircraft that the smuggling gang had hired.
The plane drops down to what we think is about 100 foot off the ground, then pulls up sharply and heads away again. And that was what we believe was a dummy run for their intended drugs drop.
When you're conducting these operations, there's always the right time to actually knock something, to actually take it further. And the team here made a decision that they actually had enough material.
But the officers in the UK were beaten to it when the pilot Leith was caught red-handed with the drugs before he'd even left the ground.
And he was actually arrested in Belgium with 63 kilos of cannabis in a light aircraft, which really confirmed our suspicions that they were intending to bring in drugs in a private aircraft.
The smugglers' plan had collapsed, and worse still, they were about to be arrested. Phipps and Little were taken out together, caught carrying a holdall and a box containing £400,000 in cash. Fisher tried to hide but was tracked using his mobile phone and arrested in a pub. They were all found guilty at trial. Little was given community service, but as the organisers, Fisher received 7 years and Phipps 5 years. It all came as a big surprise to the gang who were oblivious to the surveillance operation that snared them.
I was surprised that they were surprised. Certainly when we saw the defendants in court and they were watching the evidence that we'd collated, yeah, I would definitely say that they were surprised. I think a testament to the quality of the surveillance officers that we have.